Pheidippides, hero of ancient Greece, is the central figure in a story that was the inspiration for a modern sporting event, the marathon. He is said to have run from Marathon to Athens to deliver news of a military victory against the Persians. The story. The first recorded account showing a courier running from Marathon to Athens to announce victory is from within Lucian's prose on the first use of the word joy as a greeting in a slip of the tongue in greeting. Philippides, the one who acted as courier, is said to have used it first in our sense when he brought the news of victory from Marathon and addressed the magistrates in session when they were anxious how the battle had ended. Joy to you, we've won, he said, and then he died, breathing his last breath with the words joy to you. Lucian translated by K. Kilburn. The modern use of the word dates back to Philippides the dispatch runner. Bringing the news of Marathon, he found the archon seated, in suspense regarding the issue of the battle. Joy, we win, he said, and died upon his message, breathing his last in the word joy. Lucian prolapsu inter salutandum. The traditional story relates that Pheidippides, an Athenian herald or hemerodrome, courier, professional running courier, or day-long runner, was sent to Sparta to request help when the Persians landed at Marathon, Greece. He ran about 240 km in 2 days. He then ran the 40 km from the battlefield near Marathon to Athens to announce the Greek victory over Persia in the Battle of Marathon with the word I 1/2 I to the first IA paragraph I 1/4 I micron I 1/2, as stated by Lucian Chariot, Nicomenon to then collapse and die. Most accounts incorrectly attribute this story to the historian Herodotus, who wrote the history of the Persian Wars in his histories. However, McGill and Moose suggest that the story is likely a romantic invention. They point out that Lucian is the only classical source to which all the elements existed of the story known in modern culture as the Marathon story of Philippides, a messenger running from the fields of Marathon to announce victory, then dying on completion of his mission. Robert Browning gave a version of the traditional story in his 1879 poem Pheidippides. So, when Persia was dust, all cried, to Acropolis. Run, Pheidippides, one race more. The meed is thy due. Athens is saved, thank Pan, go shout. He flung down his shield, ran like fire once more, and the space twixt the fennel field, and Athens was stubble again, a field which a fire runs through, till in he broke, rejoice, we conquer. Like wine through clay, joy in his blood bursting his heart, the bliss. Fennel field is a reference to the Greek word for fennel, marathon, the origin of the name of the battlefield. It was this poem which inspired Baron Pierre de Coubertin and other founders of the modern Olympic Games to invent a running race of 42 km called the marathon. The story is controversial for anyone who suspects that Athenians would more likely have sent the messenger on horseback. However, it may have been possible that they used a runner, as a horse's movements would have been hindered by the rocky, mountainous terrain. Furthermore, humans are unusually good distance runners. Most animals tend to collapse of hypothermia after 10 to 15 kilometers. Horses are most effectively used as couriers over long distances when they can be switched out at waypoints a relatively short distance apart, such as with the American Pony Express mail service. In any case, no such story appears in Herodotus. The relevant passage of Herodotus is: before they left the city, the Athenian generals sent off a message to Sparta. The messenger was an Athenian named Pheidippides, a professional long-distance runner. According to the account he gave the Athenians on his return, Pheidippides met the god Pan on Mount Parthenium, above Tegea. Pan, he said, called him by name and told him to ask the Athenians why they paid him no attention, in spite of his friendliness towards them and the fact that he had often been useful to them in the past, and would be so again in the future. The Athenians believed Pheidippides' story, and when their affairs were once more in a prosperous state, they built a shrine to Pan under the Acropolis, and from the time his message was received they held an annual ceremony, with a torch race and sacrifices, to court his protection. On the occasion of which I speak, when Pheidippides, that is, was sent on his mission by the Athenian commanders and said that he saw Pan, he reached Sparta the day after he left Athens and delivered his message to the Spartan government. Men of Sparta, the Athenians ask you to help them, and not to stand by while the most ancient city of Greece is crushed and subdued by a foreign invader. For even now Eretria has been enslaved, and Greece is the weaker by the loss of one fine city. The Spartans, though moved by the appeal, and willing to send help to Athens, were unable to send it promptly because they did not wish to break their law. It was the 9th day of the month, and they said they could not take the field until the moon was full. So they waited for the full moon, and meanwhile Hippias, the son of Pisistratus, guided the Persians to Marathon. The significance of this story is only understood in the light of the legend that the god Pan returned the favor by fighting with the Athenian troops and against the Persians at Marathon. This was important because Pan, in addition to his other powers, had the capacity to instill the most extreme sort of fear, an irrational, blind fear that paralyzed the mind and suspended all sense of judgment, a panic. Herodotus, writing about 30 to 40 years after the events he describes, did, according to Miller, in fact base his version of the battle on eyewitness accounts, so it seems altogether likely that Pheidippides was an actual historical figure, although the same source claims the classical author didn't ever in fact mention a Marathon Athens runner in any of his writings. For sure, if someone ran the 246 km over rough roads from Athens to Sparta within 2 days, it would be an achievement worthy of remembrance. Whether the story is true or not, it has no connection with the Battle of Marathon itself, and Herodotus's silence on the subject of a herald running from Marathon to Athens suggests strongly that no such event occurred. The first known written account of a run from Marathon to Athens occurs in the works of the Greek writer Plutarch, in his essay on the glory of Athens. Plutarch attributes the run to a herald called either Thesippus or Eucles. Lucian, a century later, credits one Philippides. It seems likely that in the 500 years between Herodotus's time and Plutarch's, the story of Pheidippides had become muddled with that of the Battle of Marathon, and some fanciful writer had invented the story of the run from Marathon to Athens. Modern times. Spartathlon. Based on this account, British RAF Wing Commander John Fodden and 4 other RAF officers travelled to Greece in 1982 on an official expedition to test whether it was possible to cover the nearly 250 kilometres in a day and a half. 3 runners were successful in completing the distance, John Fodden, John Skoltons and John McCarthy in. Since 1983 it has been an annual foot race from Athens to Sparta, known as the Spartathlon, celebrating Pheidippides' at least semi-historical run across 246 kilometers of Greek countryside. Course records, M. 2025-00, Ioannis Kouros, 1984, F. 270217, Elizabeth Hawker, 2012, in Popular Culture. Steve Reeves played Pheidippides in the 1959 film The Giant of Marathon. In 1991, Ioannis Kouros starred as Pheidippides in the movie The Story of the Marathon, A Hero's Journey, which chronicles the history of marathon running. Sources: Aubrey de Czar, copyright Lenourt and A. Byrne. Herodotus, The Histories. Penguin Classics, 1954, 1972. Further reading, Frost, Frank J. The Dubious Origins of the Marathon. American Journal of Ancient History 4, 159 €62. Hans W. Giesen, Mythos Marathon. Von Herodotus 1/4 Bear Bra, copyright Albisser Gegenwart. Landor, Verlag Empirische Paarkcurrency-Pädagogik. ISBN 978-3-941320-46-8. External links, Spartathlon website, 1896, Phidippides. Run Again. Olympic opera by the composer Luca Belcastro, The Story of the Marathon.